be warned, a culinary journey through the United States comes with a peculiar, lingering side effect. For the countless international travelers who arrive, once you have tasted what this country has to offer, you will face a period of profound emptiness upon your return. This feeling doesn't announce its arrival. It ambushes you, quietly, in the first bite of a familiar meal. It happens in the cafe you've frequented for years, as you lift a spoonful of their daily soup to your lips and realize, with a silent, sinking feeling, that even the home cooking you grew up with now seems to be missing something essential. It's a disquieting truth that both your palate and your soul have been recalibrated to an American standard. This sentiment is now echoing in countless corners of the globe. A young man, recently returned to his home in Germany, made his way to a local restaurant billing itself as an authentic American barbecue joint. The menu promised Texas-style brisket, slow-smoked and tender. He ordered with a heart full of anticipation, a memory of a roadside pit stop outside Austin still vivid in his mind. But as the first bite met his tongue, he found himself staring down at the plate, his fork frozen in midair. There was no flavor, he later wrote, his words a digital eulogy on a travel forum. To be precise, it was just a heavy, one-dimensional sweetness. The brisket I had in Texas that had depth, it had layers. The smoke, the pepper, the patient rendering of fat. The bark alone told a story. His post was a cascade of regret, a longing for something he couldn't replicate. In Paris, a French woman paused before her morning croissant and café au lait. She posted a photo, the pastry perfectly golden, the coffee steaming invitingly. The form is the same, her caption read, but the soul is hollow. She recalled the simple, profound pleasures of her American trip, the soul-warming richness of a New England clam chowder savored on a chilly Boston afternoon, the explosive, savory juice of a perfect smash burger from a Midwestern diner, the complex, spicy depths of a Cajun gumbo that tasted of generations of Louisiana history, and the generous, smoky embrace of true Southern pulled pork, piled high on a simple bun. Each dish was unassuming, almost humble in its presentation, yet it felt as if it were being absorbed directly into her being, seeping into her with a gentle, nourishing warmth. A voice from Australia offered a similar, poignant testimony. After returning home, he walked into a gleaming, modern supermarket, a place of sterile convenience. The aisles were stocked with mass-produced snacks and sugary drinks, but he couldn't find anything that compared to the soulful offerings of an American diner or a bustling food truck court. Where were the late-night grilled cheese sandwiches, toasted to golden perfection with a cheese pull that stretched for miles? Where was the handcrafted care of a well-made taco, its fillings fresh and vibrant? In the U.S., he wrote, the food in those everyday places felt like an event, a craft. Here, it's just a product. The contrast was stark and disheartening. In the United Kingdom, a man who had ordered a slice of classic carrot cake with his afternoon tea complained bitterly. It's like a brick of sugar, he lamented. He remembered the desserts he'd had in the American South, a slice of pecan pie where the sweetness of the filling was perfectly balanced by the toasted, buttery nuts, a key lime pie with a sharp, citrusy tang that cut cleanly through the richness. American sweets, he mused, have this incredible harmony. The tang of the fruit, the savory note of a salted caramel, the creaminess of a cheesecake, they don't just fight each other for dominance. They coexist, they create a chord. My hometown cake just screams sweet, and then it's over. Meanwhile, a Canadian exchange student felt a deep dissatisfaction with his breakfast back home. Toasted white bread, scrambled eggs, a few strips of bacon. Nutritionally, it was adequate, but something was profoundly absent. He remembered the breakfasts of America. The comforting heft of a New York bagel, chewy and dense, slathered with cream cheese. The joyful mess of a breakfast burrito from a California food truck, packed with eggs, potatoes, chorizo, and salsa. The fluffy, buttermilk pancakes from a Vermont diner, swimming in real maple syrup. They weren't always elegant, he described, but they left you with this deep, comfortable satisfaction, a sense that your day was properly fortified. What's fascinating is that the dishes these travelers longed for were rarely from Michelin-starred temples of gastronomy. Their nostalgia wasn't for the tasting menus of Per Se or Alinea. It was for the $5 slice of New York pizza, foldable and perfect, the bowl of chili from a roadside diner in the heartland, or the daily specials at a southern soul food joint, served on a simple plate with a side of collard greens. The common thread in these everyday meals was not extravagance, but a spirit of generosity and an honest, heartfelt craftsmanship that left an indelible mark on their souls. And this sentiment didn't simply fade with time. The feeling of being unable to go back left people confused. Had their tastes changed? Had they themselves changed? It became impossible to know what was right anymore. It's America's fault, they'd say, half joking, half serious. They raised the bar for happiness. As these voices multiplied across online forums and traveler communities, a new term began to circulate: PUSADS, Post-USA Diet Dissatisfaction Syndrome. It was a grassroots label created spontaneously by people trying to articulate this very specific, shared experience. It refers to the feeling of profound dissatisfaction with one's own national cuisine after becoming accustomed to the sheer depth and richness of food in the United States. In America, even at the most unassuming establishments, you can sense a boldness of flavor, a richness that resonates long after the meal is over. Consider the slow-cooked sauces, simmered for hours from a base of roasted bones or patiently tended vegetables, creating a foundation of flavor that doesn't rely on superficial seasoning. Think of the meticulous smoking processes, where the choice of wood and the control of temperature are as crucial as the quality of the meat itself. Notice the attention paid to texture and composition: the perfect crust on a slice of pizza, the creamy interior of a baked potato, the generous portion sizes that speak of a culture of abundance, and the warm, unpretentious service that makes you feel at home. To be exposed to this day after day is to have not just your palate, but your very spirit acclimate to this robust sense of comfort and plenty. Upon returning home, one's native cuisine can suddenly seem muted, timid. The flavors feel one-dimensional, the portions restrained, the seasoning either too subtle or too simplistic, with aggressive salt or sugar overpowering any nuanced aroma. Of course, these are cherished national dishes, loved for generations. But to a palate re-educated in America, they can feel, to borrow a metaphor, like music with the bass turned all the way down. This is the heart of PUSADS. However, this phenomenon need not be viewed as a tragedy, but rather as an expansion of the senses. Over time, many find themselves gradually reacclimating to their home flavors, but with a new perspective. They start making their own slow-cooked tomato sauces, seeking out smoky paprika to add depth to their stews, or learning the art of a good brine. They find ways to integrate the American experience without negating their own culinary heritage. The core of American culinary excellence lies in the profound respect for the primary ingredient and the bold, slow-developed richness of its foundation. This is a fundamental truth the tongue instinctively recognizes. The key is in the Maillard reaction and the patient rendering of fats, the chemical magic that turns a simple piece of meat into a symphony of savory notes. It's in the holy trinity of onion, celery, and bell pepper, the sacred base of Louisiana Creole cooking. It's in the complex fermentation of a San Francisco sourdough starter. When these elements come together, they create a synergistic effect, a deep, resonant satisfaction far greater than the sum of their parts. On the American table, a food culture built upon this synergy is the norm. Even without an over-reliance on simple salt or sugar, flavors achieve a remarkable depth and a lingering finish. Take Texas barbecue brisket. The slow, patient smoking process coaxes out the meat's inherent beefiness, while the peppery bark provides a savory counterpoint that elevates, rather than masks, the flavor of the beef. A classic New England clam chowder finds its harmony in the balance between the briny clams, the creamy broth, and the smoky undertones of bacon, creating a comforting richness that doesn't feel heavy. The sauce on a great New York pizza is another marvel. It varies by borough, by pizzeria, even by the pizzaiolo on duty. Some are bright and acidic, others are slow-cooked and sweet, but all are designed to complement the dough and cheese, creating a perfect, harmonious bite. These culinary philosophies are not about overwhelming the palate with a single, aggressive stimulus. They are about building a profile, layering flavors and textures to create a complete, satisfying narrative. It's the art of removing the unnecessary to amplify the essential. This is why, after such a meal, one feels profoundly satisfied, not fatigued. This layering of flavor, if translated to sound, is akin to a complex harmony. Just as a song composed only of high notes would be shrill and unsatisfying, a dish that relies solely on salt or sugar for impact will quickly plateau. With a rich, flavorful base, be it a smoky barbecue pit, a dark roux, or a perfectly fermented dough, the aromas of the ingredients, the sweetness coaxed out by heat, and the depth from slow cooking can be layered like transparent veils. They unfold sequentially on the tongue, and in that unfolding, one feels the undeniable presence of care. Experiencing this complex structure on a daily basis in America naturally elevates the palate's resolution, training it to perceive subtle differences. Conditioned by this, when confronted with a dish that relies on a single, loud flavor note, the first bite might be impressive, but it quickly becomes monotonous. Sweet, salty, greasy. The volume is high, but the information is scarce. In contrast, an American classic holds your interest until the final bite. The temperature, aroma, and texture evolve. The satisfaction doesn't come from the intensity of the stimulus, but from the density of the information it conveys. American cuisine, designed around the bold, authentic flavor of its core ingredients, proves this principle at an everyday level. Therefore, once the tongue has learned this new standard, it raises its own expectations, leading to the inevitable feeling that the food back home is simply not enough. Unbeknownst to them, visitors to the United States undergo a quiet transformation in both their palate and their physical well-being. The primary reason is a natural transition to a diet where satisfaction is derived from richness and complexity rather than simple additives. American food, at its best, finds its fulfillment in smoky depths, slow-cooked tenderness, and the inherent quality of its ingredients, not from excessive salt, sugar, or oil. By not depending on aggressive seasoning, the palate is less likely to feel deprived. It gradually rediscovers its natural sensitivity, no longer needing overwhelming stimuli to register pleasure. Experts sometimes refer to this process as a flavor detox. Furthermore, the prevalence of artisanal and fermented foods contributes to this internal shift. The tangy sourdough breads of San Francisco, the cultured dairy in Vermont, the craft pickles and kimchi from food trucks across the nation. These contain probiotics that can regulate the gut microbiome, often called the second brain for its influence on overall health. Many travelers report improved digestion, deeper sleep, and clearer skin after spending time immersed in this food culture. It's common to hear remarks like, "I woke up so easily in the morning," or "the usual sluggishness I feel just disappeared." Returning from this state of well-being to a native diet can trigger a surprising reaction. When re-exposed to heavily processed foods, overly greasy dishes, or high-sugar desserts, the body can protest. A feeling of heaviness in the stomach, post-meal fatigue, intense thirst, or even a sense of nausea can occur. It's a sensation akin to withdrawal. This is not an illness, but simply the body's temporary confusion. The reaction varies greatly from person to person. Some adapt back within days, while others may take weeks. With time, most people readjust to their native food culture, but many do so with a new awareness, incorporating the lessons learned in America. They start slow cooking on weekends, seeking out better quality ingredients, and appreciating fermented foods, finding a new, personal balance. In this sense, the American experience doesn't make it impossible to go back. Rather, it serves as a catalyst to remember one's original, more sensitive palate and state of being. Having tasted food that leaves behind a comfortable, resonant satisfaction, one naturally wants to reconnect with that way of living. It isn't just the iconic dishes like a Thanksgiving turkey or a perfect steak that captivate travelers. To be sure, the perfectly executed slice of New York pizza is often described as a culinary epiphany. A bowl of Texas chili has regional loyalties as fierce as any sports rivalry. Southern fried chicken, with its impossibly crisp skin and juicy interior, feels like a miracle of culinary engineering. And the soul food traditions, collard greens, mac and cheese, cornbread, cooked with generations of love, have converted legions of foreigners. The unique American culture of enjoying these delights at tailgates, backyard cookouts, or bustling food truck parks is built on a foundation of abundance and community. However, the true shock comes when one realizes that this level of quality isn't reserved for special occasions. It permeates the everyday. Consider the offerings at a high-end grocery chain like Wegmans or Whole Foods. At first glance, a pre-made sandwich is a simple combination of bread and filling. But the quality of the sourdough, the freshness of the roasted turkey, the complexity of the aioli, the balance is uncannily precise. The rotisserie chickens are perfectly seasoned and juicy. The salads are vibrant and fresh. The quality of the prepared foods often rivals that of a dedicated restaurant. Moreover, these offerings change with the seasons. Autumn brings pumpkin spice everything, while summer showcases fresh berries and corn. Traveling to different regions reveals locally sourced specialties, ensuring a traveler is never bored. A significant shift in recent years has seen these everyday options evolve from mere convenience into conscious culinary choices. Responding to a health-conscious public, these stores now feature an abundance of low-carb, low-fat options, protein-focused meals, and products utilizing fermented foods. At the same time, a push for sustainability has led to reduced plastic packaging and a greater use of recycled materials. New product development is a relentless process, utilizing sales data and customer feedback to refine offerings weekly, tailored to season, region, and demographic. Many foreign visitors find themselves asking, why is so much care put into a simple supermarket sandwich? The answer is that the mentality of cutting corners on less expensive items simply doesn't fly in America's competitive food market. Regardless of price, a certain standard of flavor, appearance, cleanliness, and safety must be maintained. It is incredibly rare to find a country in the world that has established such a high baseline as its everyday standard. It is this pervasive, daily excellence that retrains the traveler's palate and delivers a quiet shock upon their return home. An item accessible to everyone, yet executed at a level few can imitate, is a truth that captures the hearts of many. Behind the global acclaim for American cuisine lies not just glamorous dishes and traditions, but an environment of extraordinarily fierce competition. Only the establishments that withstand constant scrutiny can survive. In America, the culture of food criticism is hyper-developed. Word of mouth, Yelp reviews, Google ratings, food blogs, and social media create a powerful evaluation ecosystem. The slightest misstep or dissatisfaction is easily shared, forcing businesses to constantly improve. There's a deeply ingrained expectation that service staff will not only address complaints seriously, but will strive to do better next time. Even part-time employees are expected not just to follow a manual, but to demonstrate the autonomy to judge a situation based on a customer's expression or tone of voice. In reality, a staggering number of restaurants fail within their first few years. To survive for a decade is a mark of true resilience. This brutal natural selection sets the foundation. The places that remain are the ones that have been forged in the fire, not those that are merely good enough. The result is not an environment where food is good because it's expensive, but one where delicious food is found everywhere. This democratization of quality is perhaps the greatest strength of American food culture. Deliciousness is not a reward for a special occasion. It exists as part of the everyday landscape. The baseline, regardless of price, is exceptionally high. This is what astounds foreigners the most and leads to their post-return discomfort. The value lies not only in the taste of the dish itself. In American eateries, from the prep stage, to the temperature control of ingredients, to the cleaning of cooking utensils, to the timing of service, subtle rules and habits are meticulously enforced. Even in chain restaurants, Manuals are constantly updated to standardize sanitation, flavor consistency, and employee conduct. These seemingly insignificant differences accumulate over time. Long-standing family-owned establishments don't just rely on a chef's intuition. They're built on a culture of daily adjustments, always aiming to be just a little bit better than yesterday. This cultural soil is difficult to replicate abroad. It's possible to imitate the appearance and taste of a Philly cheesesteak or a California roll, but to deliver that quality at a consistent level day in and day out requires education, time, investment, and a shared cultural understanding. For example, a master pitmaster in Texas knows that a change of just a few degrees in his smoker can alter the final product. A baker in New York measures the humidity each morning because he knows it will affect his dough. Overseas, this level of obsession might seem baffling. Is all that really necessary? In an American kitchen, thermometers, timers, sanitation logs, and inventory management are taken for granted. New menus and seasonal tweaks are constantly tested. Customer feedback from social media is immediately shared with the store. Even in a small diner, this accumulation of effort happens organically. That's why foreigners are so often amazed, saying, even the cheapest food in America seems to have a soul poured into it. In other words, the taste of America is not just a recipe. It's the result of sustained effort and a spirit that refuses to compromise on the details. One can imitate the surface, but the immense effort behind it cannot be easily exported. The difficulty of replicating American cuisine overseas goes beyond cooking methods. The very mechanisms for transporting ingredients to the establishment are fundamentally different. America's vast and sophisticated logistics network allows for ingredients to travel from farm or coast to the restaurant table with astonishing speed, all under strict temperature control. The Maine lobster served in a Las Vegas casino is flown in daily, kept in carefully monitored conditions to preserve its sweet flavor. The heirloom tomatoes from California, destined for a salad in Chicago, are transported in refrigerated trucks that ensure they arrive with their delicate aroma and texture intact. Even if one were to use the same ingredients overseas, a lapse in the cold chain, a moment of elevated temperature during transit, would result in a noticeable degradation of flavor and texture, even if the appearance remains unchanged. The relationship between food and water is also crucial. Many iconic American foods owe their unique character to local water. The soft water of New York City is famously credited as the secret ingredient for its bagels and pizza dough, allowing for a perfect gluten development. In places with harder water, even the same flour and recipe will yield a different, often inferior, result. The same principle applies to slow-cooked stocks and sauces. If the water is too hard, calcium from the bones won't dissolve as readily, making it difficult to achieve a clear, aromatic broth. Thus, even if you follow a recipe to the letter, a different water source at the foundation will change the entire outcome. Furthermore, the quality of American cuisine changes with adjustments measured in millimeters and seconds. The way a brisket is sliced against the grain at a specific thickness dramatically affects its tenderness. For Southern fried chicken, the thickness of the batter, the temperature of the oil, and the precise number of seconds it spends in the fryer determine whether it becomes crispy perfection or a greasy disappointment. For a simple pasta dish, a 10-second deviation in cooking time can be the difference between perfectly al dente and a mushy mess. This sensitive and nuanced calibration cannot be achieved by a single chef alone. It is built upon a foundation of logistics that preserve freshness, the water and produce that support the kitchen, and the invisible scaffolding of the entire American society. The taste of America is not just the product of culinary technique, it is co-created by the entire environment, from production to plate. Those who attempt to recreate it abroad are first confronted with economic barriers. Importing ingredients from the U.S. incurs shipping and preservation costs. For fresh produce, proper temperature management is expensive. If one tries to substitute with local ingredients, differences in freshness or water quality will alter the flavor. Hiring American-trained chefs inflates labor costs. The result might be a bowl of clam chowder that costs 3 to 5 times as much, and even then, customers will say, It doesn't have the same soul as the one I had in Boston. Many chefs struggle with this paradox. Yet what is missing is not just technique and materials. American food is often consumed as part of a cultural package. At a dusty barbecue joint in rural Texas, the sight of the pitmaster, moving with an unhurried, practiced grace, the smell of smoldering hickory wood smoke, the heat radiating from the pits, all become part of the flavor. In a New Orleans jazz club, the sound of a saxophone wailing, the lively chatter of fellow diners, and the humid, magnolia-scented air are inseparable from the taste of the gumbo. In a classic diner, the feel of the worn vinyl booth, the clatter of ceramic mugs, the low hum of conversation, all are imprinted on the memory along with the taste. Even the tableware holds the same power, the comforting weight of a heavy ceramic bowl, the soft touch of a worn wooden table, the temperature of the dish as it arrives. The color of the lighting, the way the steam rises, all of it is engraved in the body alongside the taste. That is why a dish made in a sterile, overseas restaurant using the same ingredients and recipe will always feel like it's missing something. As one traveler eloquently put it, a southern pulled pork sandwich isn't just pork and bread. It's the humid air, the communal picnic table, and the quiet pride in the pitmaster's eyes. The deliciousness of America is not achieved by the dish in isolation. It's a cultural suite that includes space, sound, movement, smell, and temperature. This is why a single flavor, when replicated, can never achieve the original's emotional resonance. Among the voices of those captivated by American cuisine, there are not only sighs of "my food back home tastes like cardboard now." As time passes, a more positive perspective emerges. The American experience becomes a catalyst for re-examining one's own food culture. A baker in France put it this way: "After returning from the States, I finally understood why I was never satisfied with my own bread. I wasn't trying to bring out the flavor of the wheat itself. I was just chasing a bigger crust or adding more butter." Since then, he has slightly reduced the salt in his dough and changed his methods to highlight the grain's natural aroma. An American home cooking expert, ironically, one who had to leave her own country to appreciate it, spoke of what she learned from the simple, clear broths of Vietnamese pho she discovered in Houston's vibrant immigrant community. In so many global traditions that have found a home in America, satisfaction is created with a flavorful stock, not just salt or fat. I started reducing the salt in my own soup recipes and adding the natural umami of mushrooms or dried shrimp. I feel like my family's health has improved, and our bodies feel lighter. An Italian chef said he could never forget his surprise upon tasting perfect Southern fried chicken. The crust was so thin, not at all greasy. It was as if the ingredient itself was breathing. So, I started making the batter on my fried zucchini blossoms thinner and shortening the frying time. A German home cook confessed, "Thanks to the amazing pickles and sauerkraut I had on Rubens in New York delis, I started paying more attention to my own country's fermented foods. I finally realized that sauerkraut and sausage aren't just for preservation." American food culture, in its vast, absorptive capacity, never negates the cuisines of other nations. On the contrary, its attitude of embracing authentic flavors and stripping away the non-essential provides a new lens through which other countries can view their own culinary traditions. The number of people who, inspired by their experiences in the U.S., develop a deeper love for their native food culture and strive to refine it is growing. What begins as dissatisfaction ultimately transforms into respect and creativity. This evolution is, perhaps, the quiet power inherent in American food. The profundity of American food culture is also evident in the fact that there is no single, uniform taste across the country. For example, even a foundational dish like barbecue is completely different in the North and South, not to mention the Midwest or the West. The Carolinas favor vinegar-based, pulled pork. Kansas City loves a sweet, thick, tomato-based sauce on ribs. Texas is all about the dry-rubbed, slow-smoked beef brisket. And Memphis has its own unique style, often served dry with just a rub. A clam chowder in Manhattan is tomato-based and brothy, while its New England cousin just a few hours north is thick, creamy, and white. There isn't just one type of pizza, either. You have the thin, foldable crust of New York, the deep dish casserole of Chicago, and the crispy, coal-fired pies of New Haven. Regional specialties abound: a po' boy in New Orleans, a cheesesteak in Philadelphia, a lobster roll in Maine. Each has its own distinct aroma and flavor profile. Some are surprised by the intense richness of a Chicago deep dish pizza, while others are captivated by the clean, briny sweetness of oysters on the half shell in Seattle. Even staple crops have regional personalities. The sweet corn of the Midwest, the Vidalia onions of Georgia, the Hatch chiles of New Mexico. The same species of plant will have a different sweetness and character depending on the soil and climate. The more you explore, the more you realize that the phrase American food is far too simple to capture its immense diversity. Imagine a traveler who eats a slice of pizza in New York and declares it the best thing they've ever tasted. Then they go to New Orleans and are stunned by the complex, soulful flavor of gumbo. Next, they find themselves in Austin, biting into a perfect brisket, and they nod, realizing this, too, is the correct answer. Every time they change locations, the standard is updated. This is why people return to America again and again, to confirm the continuation of a taste they once knew and to encounter another correct answer they have yet to meet. The magic of American cuisine is perhaps not that it provides a single answer, but that it allows countless forms of deliciousness to coexist in quiet harmony. The reason American food is said to change a person's palate is because it subtly, piece by piece, alters the very definition of normal. The extravagant steakhouse dinner, the simple bowl of grits for breakfast, the late-night hot dog from a street cart, the pre-packaged sandwich eaten on a cross-country train, all of these remain in a traveler's memory, serving as a new axis of comparison long after they've returned home. And America's appeal is not just its flavors, but its terroir, the generosity and casual etiquette that permeate its life. The culture of taking care of others, of offering a hearty portion, of asking how y'all doing with genuine interest. The chefs, the product developers at grocery stores, the long-haul truck drivers, the fishermen, the farmers, the artisans who craft the ceramic plates, their individual work connects like an invisible thread to form the flavor of that single bite. When you return home and remember the steam rising from a bowl of New England clam chowder, it's not just your tongue that remembers. It's your soul. The food culture of America, perhaps, is not about creating a feeling of fullness. It is about creating a feeling of warmth, of being cared for, of being alive. And that it tastes so comforting and every day could exist at a world-class level, that is the quiet, undeniable power of the United States.